Hey there, everybody. Brad Geiger here with another episode of Webcomics Confidential. And last night, I got into a huge discussion, turned into a big thread on Twitter, and it's a topic that I find continually fascinating. I'm passionate about this, and it's come up from time to time. And since Twitter is such a horrible way to try to have a discussion in 140 characters or less, I wanted to take this opportunity to talk a little bit more about it and share with you some of my opinions on this topic that I think is central to what we do as web cartoonists. I'm gonna bring this to a full circle at the end and tell you why I argue as strongly as I do about this. But first, let's introduce the topic. So last night, as I'm making dinner for the kids, I see this come across my Twitter, and the question is, what do you feel is the top three best ways to get traffic to a webcomic? And if those of you who have been following me on webcomics.com for more than a day or two knew exactly how I was going to respond to this, my answer was number one, do a good comic. Number two, do a good comic. Number three, do a good comic. And then I asked, want to hear numbers 4 through 100? This really touched off a very what I considered to be angry and defensive response to what I had said. People want it to be anything except whether they can do a good comic. They don't want to hear that their comic's not good enough. And and believe me, I am not sitting here pontificating on whether you're doing a good comic or not. I can tell you this. I had to do a bad comic. I had to learn before I could do a better comic. And I don't even pretend to be out here doing the world's best comic. I'm getting better. I'm trying to better myself year after year, and I think I'm still trying to get to that goal. So I don't want to come off as someone who's saying you're doing a bad comic. That's not my place. However, there are some fairly objective ways you can take a look at the quality of your comic and saying you're not there yet. And that's different. That's different than saying you're not very good. It's you're not there yet, and the only way you're going to get there is by working to improve. And here's the other thing. I always say it's impossible to get worse at something that you do every day, and I believe that 100%. However, there's also this: not everybody is going to be as successful as they want to be. There are some people who just, despite the work that they do, they're just never going to be a great artist. They're never going to be a great writer for whatever reason. It might just not be in them. They might not have the proper mental and physical setup to do that. This is not something that is guaranteed to anybody. It's like all of the arts. There's 100 different stories of people who worked at it all of their lives, and for one reason or another, they just didn't get it. And there's no guarantee for any of us that we're going to achieve that final goal. All we can do, if we want it bad enough, is to keep working at it and do a genuine dedication to improving. And this is why this is such an important topic, because the more time you spend looking for that magic hashtag, convincing yourself that the internet is too big and it's impossible to be seen, and all of that stuff, the more time you spend on that, the less time you're spending taking an honest, critical look at your comic and trying to get better. And that's the only way you're going to get better. So, because Twitter is such a horrible way to communicate, I wanted to take some time and kind of flesh out some of my thoughts on this, and at the end of the day, they are my opinions. I am not trying to hand this down as law. I don't have that kind of fortitude on this. I don't have that kind of power. I'm sharing with you what I've seen over 17 years of doing this pretty intimately. But there's no way that I can tell you that this is absolute. It's not. And anybody who does offer you absolute, I want you to be very, very mindful of, because there are no absolutes. There really aren't. So, in response to this, immediately, like within moments, somebody came in and said, but also spread the word on social media and maybe even advertise, right? I mean, a good comic no one knows about can only go so far. I disagree. You know what I think about the power of social media, and I think you should be building social media as a part of your everyday adventure in webcomics. You should be pursuing good social media. However, social media whereas it is somewhat good at promoting your comic, it's somewhat good at bringing a new person to your webcomic. The much more powerful part of social media is its ability for you to communicate with that audience that you have built with your comic. Those are two different things. Social media can bring you some people to your comic. It's absolutely powerful for that. You don't want to discount that at all. But where the real power of social media is your ability to communicate with those people that you have attracted. That's where you can talk about Patreon. That's where you can talk about a Kickstarter. That's when you can talk about a book, an appearance, stuff like that. That's why I want you to be concentrating on social media. Any amount of promoting to new converts to your comic is great, but really what you want to be doing is establishing those lines of communication. That's what it's really all about. And building so that when later on, when you do send a message out, it goes to a larger group of people. Okay? So social media, absolutely important. However, it's not a make or break thing for your comic. In other words, you can have stellar social media. If your comic isn't good, doesn't matter. The comic has to be good. That's why it's number 1, 2, 3, all the way to 100. Everything else comes second to that. So a good social media is not going to save a bad comic. That's why I'm passionate about rearranging this conversation, okay? And advertising, holy cats. If you pay any money to advertising, and frankly, if you're paying money to have somebody market your comic, I'm very, very doubtful of the effectiveness of either of those, okay? And particularly advertising. If you're paying money to advertise, please take lots of time to understand how that advertising works. Are you targeting a message? Are you crafting a message? Are you targeting it towards people who are likely to become interested in your comic? Is that message going to be delivered to where those people are? Is it going to be delivered when those people are going to be at their peak levels? So on and so forth, time and time again. Advertising is extremely complicated. It is not Project Wonderful where you plug and play and do a shotgun approach and hope you hit the side of a barn. You are going to lose tons of money on advertising unless you really know what you're doing. Okay? And unless you've got somebody, you can certainly bring somebody in, but chances are that person is just trying to sell you advertising, and they are not going to be your partner in this venture. Okay, so be very careful on advertising. Be very careful of anybody that wants you to pay to market your comic. It's way more complicated than just you pay money and you get readers. It doesn't work that way. And again, you could sink tens of thousands of dollars into marketing and advertising for your comic. And if the comic isn't good, you will do a very good job of driving traffic to that comic. You could, I will cede that you could, if you spent enough money, send millions of people to your comic. If the comic isn't good, they're not going to stay. The end. Okay, like that. I wrote about this in that magic wand piece that I did, and I said if I had a magic wand and I told you that I could deliver you 1 million readers, would you take that? And of course, everybody would say yes, I'd take that. Here's the deal: you've already had 1 million people come through your site over the past year or 2 years. You didn't keep them. Why? You've already had the magic wand. You didn't keep those people. Why is that? Wasn't the magic hashtag, it wasn't SEO, it wasn't marketing, it wasn't advertising. It's because your comic wasn't grabbing them for whatever reason. Maybe it wasn't drawn in such a way that they responded to the visual of it. Chances are it wasn't written very well. And all of the other things that file in behind that, lettering, coloring, editing, web presentation, those are all important things. Tantamount. Number one, though, is the quality of that comic. The writing, the lettering, the art, the composition, the editing, the things that go into making a good comic is why you didn't keep the 1 million people that came through your site. Why do I know this? It's because I've seen the same 1 million people go through my site, okay? And I'm trying to get better at keeping a larger and larger percentage of them. But I know when I don't hit the mark, it's not because I didn't use the magic hashtag. It's because my comic wasn't grabbing them for whatever reason. And I can't grab them until I figure out why that is. That's just all. There's no other explanation for that. And the more I explain this on Twitter, the more people really wanted to challenge this. For example, here's one person that says, he could not understand that because he says, I'm pulling it up right here. There are many gorgeous comics. In fact, many of them often have very modest traffic. Good content means little if nobody knows about it. Lots of gorgeous comics out there with little traffic. You know why? Because they're not written very well. And there are a good number of well-written comics out there that aren't attracting the traffic they should be because their visual presentation isn't very good. This is something that is incredibly difficult to pull off. Doing a good comic is really, that's why not everybody is at that level. And that's why it's taken me such a long time to get even close to that level. All right? There's gorgeous comics out there, beautiful comics that don't have the traffic that this person feels they deserve. I'm going to say that one of the reasons is maybe it's a gorgeous comic that's poorly produced, poorly written. Okay? Here's the other thing when we're talking about this issue. And it goes back to a Webcomics Weekly that we did a long time ago. And I remember Dave and Scott were kind of comparing numbers on traffic and stuff. And Scott had big traffic numbers. And Dave had relatively small traffic numbers. And they were comparing how their businesses was working. And they both were doing very, very well, despite the fact that their numbers were way off the charts from each other. The size of the traffic really doesn't matter. These numbers are inconsequential. It doesn't matter what size of the traffic it is. It's what you're doing with that traffic you do get. If you've got if you're really connecting with your audience, you can do a great business with a very small audience. That's what the web is all about. It's why we've cut out the middleman in every chance we could. It's why we don't spend money on marketing. It's why we don't spend money to bring third parties in to do stuff that we can do ourselves. It's because as web cartoonists, we've got the ability to cut out the middleman and make a bigger slice of the income from a smaller, relatively, audience. You don't need a big audience if you're connecting with those readers. And you can't connect with those readers unless you're doing a good comic. It all comes back to the good comic. Okay? So yeah, I agree. I don't know which ones he's talking about, but I would be willing to bet that there are gorgeous comics that don't have the traffic that you would expect that they would have. And I'm going to argue that that's because there's something missing that's keeping that from being a truly good comic. And it ain't the hashtag, and it ain't the SEO, and it ain't the amount of money they're pumping into marketing. And again, somebody else came in and said, I call bullshit. I know many good comics that have been running for ages and still no traffic. Here's another thing I'd like to talk about. And it is this idea of a good comic. What I think is a good comic and what you think is a good comic are two different things. And it really doesn't matter. What matters is what a hopefully larger group of people, our readers, thinks is a good comic. All right? And I can look at comics as a web cartoonist that I think, man, I'm surprised that isn't better than it is because it's the sort of thing that really appeals to me. But it doesn't matter if it appeals to me as a cartoonist. I'm looking at that thing with a completely different set of eyes. All right? What matters is what a large group of people think about it. And if it's connecting with those people, we know from years and years and years of seeing this happen on the web, if that comic connects, it is going to get shared on social media. People are going to spread the word. More and more people are going to come on, and then there's a ripple effect that gets larger and larger and larger as a larger group of people continually spread the word about this thing that they like. It's how it's exactly what those marketing people, as soon as they start talking viral marketing, it's exactly the effect that they're hoping for. They're hoping to buy into. They're hoping to manufacture. But it's what a good comic will generate. Slowly, over time, a bigger and bigger number of people are sharing that comic with their friends and spreading the word about it. Are there comics out there that you look at and say, oh, I'm surprised that doesn't have bigger traffic? Probably. Does that mean that those people need to put more time in or money into advertising and marketing? I don't think so. I think that what that means is there are certain things that appeal to me as a person, as a cartoonist, that don't appeal to a wider audience. That's really what it comes down to. And it doesn't matter if I think it's good. What matters is if a large group of readers thinks it's good. And if readers think it's good, they're going to share it. Those people are going to share it, and it gets larger and larger and larger. You can't hide good work on the web. Not if you're doing the basics on your website, making it easy for them to share with social media, stuff like that. Buttons right underneath your comic that encourage this. Not if you're doing your basics of webcomics. You can't hide good work on the web. You just can't. And those people who are feeling that they're doing really good work, all right, and they don't think their traffic is large enough, you're taking your eye off the ball. It isn't about the numbers. It's about what you're doing with those numbers. It's what you do with that traffic that matters. Again, it's not like people, I get this question so many times emailed to me where people say, at what number of page views can I consider myself a professional? What a dumb question. It's not, you do not reach a magic number and then get told that you are official now. People have done this, have converted this into a viable business at all kinds of different page views, at all different types of audience sizes. That number doesn't matter. What matters is what you're doing with those people. You never come across good content that went unnoticed? I've seen it happen tons of times. Hidden gems is a term for a reason. Maybe. And I will go this far. I have seen comics that are building an audience, but I know if they continue, they're going to continue to build and build and build. Again, this is not an overnight thing. When we first started doing, way back at the beginning, the How to Make Webcomics book, we experienced something that we called the 9-month itch, where people would start their comics 9 months later if they weren't quitting their day jobs and sustaining themselves 100% with their webcomics. And it was really eerie. It was always, we'd look, and they were always 9 months in to their comic. They would write us very angry notes saying, you guys are liars. It's not happening. It takes a while to do this. You've got to be able to put the time in. You've got to put the effort in. And you've got to be able to bring it day after day after day after day. And yes, I don't know whether I would consider them hidden gems, but a comic that's in the process of building a readership, absolutely. Is there a shortcut to that? No way. I really believe that. There is no shortcut. You're not going to buy your way to the top. You're not going to be able to, again, use that amazing hashtag that can make all this stuff go away. This guy here wrote, and I owe Cameron I owe him an apology because I was not 100%. I was at that point. Dinner was done. I was kind of cleaning up dishes, and I did not give this the time and the thought that it required. But what he said was, this is definitely true, but I would also say that somewhere on the 4 to 100 list should be maintain a rock steady regular update schedule. And I kind of dismissed that. And so I want to talk about that for a second. Regular updates and being able to deliver frequently, consistently, and significantly. Those of you who have been reading this site for a long time know that that's what I've always considered to be really the central mantra to webcomics: frequent, consistent, and significant. Every update has to be as frequent as it can be while maintaining a consistent schedule and quality, and every update has to be significant. I kind of dismissed that, and it was unfortunate because he's absolutely right. Being able to do this, the only word I would take out of that would be rock steady, because I don't think it's as important today as it was in like 2005 when I was doing this. It's not as important to be rock steady. Back then, back in the day, I know, old man Geiger. Back in the day, it was not only important to update as close to daily as you can, but I felt it was very important to update the same time of day, to make that as rhythmic as you possibly could, so that you were training people. The comic is going to be up at 12 o'clock midnight Eastern time, or 6 o'clock in the morning Pacific time, so on and so forth. Back in 2005, man, when you were trying to make that habitual reading, that I think was crucial. 2017, social media has so greatly affected how our readers consume entertainment that they're not coming to our sites and expecting to see the comic. They're being alerted to an update by our social media. Okay, there's a few of them that are still hanging on to RSS. God love them, because I like that. I think that was a great way to run things. Still a few of them holding on to RSS. Still a few of them use bookmarks. Still a few of them coming to the site, of course. And like I said, I love that happens. But the huge majority of our readers are not doing that. They're standing by the side of the stream in Facebook, and they're watching things wash by. They're scrolling and scrolling. And that's why social media is important, because you want to be part of that scroll. And then they see, they get notified of an update that way. And what happens most often is that they realize that they've missed a few updates. They go back, they binge, they catch up, so on and so forth. But it is very, and all of that is fine, by the way. That's all great. But it means, on the bright side, that the need for a rock steady regular update, like we needed that schedule in 2005, isn't as important as it is today. Still pretty important if you're building an audience. If you're in that building phase, yeah, I'd say you could do worse things than to get a little bit overboard with your attention to maintaining a schedule. I'll grant you that. But what I do want to point out is that you can do very well now by holding back from that update, making sure that you're only posting really good stuff when you do post, and then using social media to alert your readers and your fans that a new thing is up. In fact, I would rather see, here's the problem with that rock-steady regular update schedule. Because believe me, I've been looking at webcomics for a long, long time, and I see this time and time again. People are putting out total garbage regularly, all right? And they're telling themselves that the schedule is more important than the quality, because it's like, well, yeah, the comic wasn't very good, but I hit my deadline. Well, yes, but I love that you're hitting that deadline. I love that you have updated frequently and consistently, but you're dying on the significant part because that comic isn't good that you're posting regularly. So that's why I'd like to introduce just a little bit of pull back from that schedule, in that I would rather see you as a web cartoonist who is trying to improve. I'd rather see you miss your deadline and post something really good the next day, or the next week, or the next month. Okay, if that's what it takes, then to stick with this schedule and tell yourself, yay, you won because you posted crap on another day, and kick the can down the road for the next updates when the next one is supposed to be up. I'd rather see you say, you know what, this ain't working. I'm going to take a month off and retool, and those readers will be there when you get back. And if they're not, there's more where that came from. You're not. I don't buy into this whole idea of losing ground. I think you can slide back a little bit. But I think there's especially if you're doing good social media, there's always that opportunity to come back and say, hey, been gone for a little bit, here's the new thing. And if you've been using that time wisely, I think you're going to make up that any amount of ground you did lose. I think you're going to make that up so quickly. If you've done good stuff in the meantime. So that's all. And of course, you could say, how can I say that on Twitter? So yeah, Cameron, I owe you an apology. I kind of dismissed that. However, you see where my head was at. I'd like to introduce a little bit of a step back from that rock steady regular upload schedule. I'd like to start to argue on the other side of that a little bit, and tell people that are trying to get better at this that it's okay to miss an update if it meant that they spend that extra time trying to do something really good. That's what I was trying to say. Now this is where it gets really sad. It gets really difficult, because one person comes in and says, if that's all it takes, why do comics that absolutely suck have more traffic than mine? And I went to this person's comic. I clicked around his site, and I went to his webcomic, and It's. I promised I was not going to say it's horrible. It is exactly where many of us find ourselves when we are beginning. It's not there yet. It's not there yet. And again, this is where I told you I was going to bring it all full circle. As this person is so hyper focused on these other comics suck and they're doing better, I got news for you. If they're doing better, they don't suck. All right? And you're taking the focus off of where it needs to be, and as a result, you're not taking a hard enough look at your own stuff. This guy, the lettering is horrible. The art is better than it was when it started, but it still isn't there yet. And the writing is, it's a humor comic, and this person is not spending any time crafting a joke. There's no editing. There's no pushing the concept. There certainly is no thought to how a joke is presented. That idea of building suspense to the fourth panel and then releasing it. It's all over the place. And the thing that breaks my heart is that this guy's been doing it. I went back and looked. He started in 2010. And it's head and shoulders above what it was in 2010. It's way better than it was in 2010. But it's really not there. This comic is not done to the quality that is going to bring any amount of traffic. And the longer this person spends trying to find a magic hashtag, try to buy his way in with marketing and advertising, the more he keeps the focus off of the quality of the comic and on something else. The world is unfair. These other comics suck and they've got better traffic than mine. There must be something that they're doing that some secret cabal, something going on that is unfair to me. The more this person continues to hold on to this mindset that it's something other than the quality of the comic, the longer it's going to take for them to address the real problems, the basics of cartooning, lettering. Oh my God, the lettering is Crossbar Eye is the beginning, the tip of the iceberg of what's going on with this comic. And then the most important thing for a humor comic, more important than any other thing, writing a joke, writing something that's funny, and then polishing it and working it over and editing it and making it better, pushing the concept, going towards the funny is. That's not going to happen. The longer this, because this is, and I am going to probably make a pretty safe guess that this person's never going to get there, because I don't. It's very rare for someone to do this for 7 years and all of a sudden get that kind of mindset change that it's going to take for them to all of a sudden get hyper focused on what really needs to be done. They're always going to be assuming that it's something else. That all I got to do. That's the problem with. That's the problem of this thing that we've created here in terms of webcomics, is that it's almost we become gamblers. And we don't want to stop this comic and try something new, because we think if we just hold on a little bit longer, it's going to hit. Just like that person pulling the slot machine, just one more quarter, it's going to hit next. And the same thinking applies to our approach to social media. Sure, this thing that I've been doing has not been effective on social media, just posting the comic and saying, here's a new comic. And we're just pulling that one-armed bandit, and we think that if it's going to hit next, it's going to hit next. That's why I get passionate about this, because the whole time that we're doing that, we're ignoring the real reason your comic and my comic isn't doing better than it is, and that is because we need to spend more time working on improving our comic. Believe me, I apply this to myself all the time. Okay, you can imagine what it's like being inside my head. I'm always taking a very critical look at my stuff. Where can it be better? Where am I failing? What circumstances led up? I had a bad week this week. I'm constantly going back. Okay, where did you fall? Where'd you fall apart? Where did the creative process fall apart? Could you have planned better? You knew this was coming down the line. Could you have positioned yourself better? I'm constantly trying to do that on my own. I know for a fact that if I had my focus on trying to find the magic hashtag, I'd have a lot further to go than I do. And believe me, weeks like this, it already feels like I've got pretty far to go. So that's the Twitter conversation in way more than 140 characters. The only two places I'll waver a little bit, like I said, the idea of the schedule was a more nuanced conversation, and the importance of social media, absolutely, it is important, but I think that too isn't about so much bringing in new readers as it is about a much bigger thing of establishing your own lines of communication between you and a hopefully larger and larger audience. So that's what I think. That's what I think about this. Do a good comic. It's 1, 2, 3, and probably for certain the top 10. And the reason I say that is because until you can do that, all the social media in the world isn't going to help you. All the advertising, all the marketing, all the SEO in the world isn't going to help you unless you can do a good comic. That's what it's all about, guys. And the more you focus on other stuff, the longer it's going to take you to really improve because you've got your eye off the ball. That's my thoughts. This is Brad Geiger once again for Webcomics.com. Think I'm full of shit? It's happened before. Hit me in the comments on Webcomics.com and let me know what you think. This is a topic that I can see from Twitter is going to generate a really good discussion. So hit that comment and let me know what you think. I'm looking forward to the discussion that ensues. We'll see you next time.